Welcome to Black Hat Asia 2020 to my presentation, What the Luck? So many events, so little time. My name is Miriam and currently I'm working as a program manager for Microsoft Defender ATP and Microsoft Threat Protection. Before I started in that role, I worked as a Premier Field Engineer, also for Microsoft. And in that role, I consulted organizations to improve their security posture and also to improve their monitoring and auditing. And this is also where my story starts. But before we start with that, if you have any feedback, any feature requests, any questions, be sure to not contact Microsoft because this is my personal work and my personal tool. So just reach out to me, and in the best case, you can do this via Twitter. So when I worked with customers, this is not an accurate image of how I looked like when working with customers. This should demonstrate an attacker trying to get into an organization. And normally, if an attacker tries to attack 24 hours to 48 hours after the initial attack, an attacker normally has gained foothold and access of the whole environment. And if organizations detected it all, normally it takes more than 200 days that they detect that there was a breach. And therefore, to keep attackers out of the environment and to help organizations to detect them better and quicker, Microsoft has released the so-called Microsoft Security Compliance Toolkit. And in this toolkit, there are not only some very useful tools that helps you when you are working with baselines, there are also security baselines that helps you to configure your environment. Those baselines are recommendations, though there are hardening configuration options in there, and there are also auditing recommendations. And be sure, if you want to apply such a baseline, don't just apply it, just test it and make sure that everything works, because you're hardening your environment with it. So coming back to those audit policies, if you open such a baseline with a policy viewer, which is also part of the security compliance toolkit, then you can also see those audit policies telling you what you should configure to see more in your environment. And if you configure those audit policies, there are additional events that are being generated. And so I worked with a customer, and I also recommended, oh yeah, dear customer, you definitely should turn on those audit policies to see what is happening in your environment. It is totally worth it. And the customer asked me, well, if I turn on those policies, there are new events that are being generated, right? I said, yeah, right. Are there maybe, or is there maybe a documentation on what events are being generated if I apply a certain baseline? And it was like, well, there is this document that has 754 pages. But the customer was, no, I meant really a simple page, a one page or something, that on which you can just see which event IDs would be generated if I turn on this baseline. And I was like, unfortunately, no, sorry. And so the customer asked me to write down all the events that would be generated when they would apply a certain baseline. I was not very happy at all, but I agreed and I started writing down all the event IDs in an Excel sheet, and it was such a huge workload. And while I was doing so, the customer showed up at my desk and they asked me, oh, we also want to apply this baseline. Could you also write down the events that would be generated by this one? And not only this, also this baseline, this baseline, this baseline, and this baseline too. And I was like, oh my God, would you like me to write down all these events for the next 10 years? And well, that was what the customer required. I was not happy at all because that was too much work. And so I thought about a way to automate it. And this was when I came up with the first version of Event List. And this is what it looked like. I created an Excel sheet and put a lot of macros behind. You had the option to import baselines. If those baselines were imported, you had the option to select the baseline from the drop down and generate an event list for a baseline. And this is what it looked like. So you had the event ID, you had a link to the documentation where you could find more information about the event, and you also had the recommendation if you should monitor it for success, for failure, or for both. So the customer was happy. I moved on. I went to the next customer, also presented my tool, and the customer asked me, have you heard about MITRE ATT&CK? And actually, I had heard about MITRE ATT&CK. And MITRE ATT&CK is a framework to improve the security of organizations in a more strategic way. You can see all those MITRE ATT&CK areas. Those are the categories under which the MITRE ATT&CK techniques fall. And this is how it looks like on their webpage. So you see again all the areas as headlines, and below the areas the according techniques. If you open a technique, you can see what the technique is about, who is using this technique, and how to audit and how to mitigate. And so yeah, I was hooked, so I thought about how I can implement MITRE ATT&CK to event list. And if you have a look at the MITRE sources, then you can see that we are only talking about event logs at this point. So just a small area from the data sources that can feed to MITRE ATT&CK. And these were not the only customers that I was working with to help them building their SOC. And when I did so, there were always 3 questions that were repeated over and over again. So first question, because I always recommended to use those security baselines recommended by Microsoft. So first question was, well, which events are being generated if I apply this baseline? And second question, well, if I forward all the events, and if I do have a limited storage space, what should I do? Because I don't want to forward the events that are not worthwhile to monitor. So I want to forward all the most important event IDs. How do I find out which events I should forward? And last but not least, if you have all your events in one space, what do you do with that? Well, some people say, well, we keep it for forensic purpose, but well, honestly, if you have never looked into the data, then you will not be able to figure out what happened in case of a breach. So therefore, last but not least, you want to create hunting queries. You want to know what is going on in your environment. And so the next version, I converted everything I had to PowerShell and also created a GUI. And I presented this GUI at some conferences, also Black Hat, Arsenal in the past, and I also presented it to other customers, to friends, And the next question that I got from all the people was, well, could you not only make it available via GUI, can you also implement PowerShell CLI access? And I was like, hell yeah, that sounds like an amazing idea. And so the version that I'm talking today was born. Event list with PowerShell CLI access. So to open event list, you need to type in a PowerShell command line, open event list GUI, and shortly after that, the event list UI opens. So you have, so you have over there all the MITRE attack areas and also the techniques. On the left, you have the option to select a baseline. And if you select a certain baseline, all the fields are getting populated. So you can see what techniques, what MITRE techniques are covered by this baseline. You also have the option to import a baseline or to delete one. So here you see all the pre-populated baselines that are already in event list. You see all the MITRE attack techniques and areas are pre-populating. So if you want to import a baseline, there are two options. You can either import a backed up GPO or a Microsoft security baseline. You need to specify the folder in which you find the GPO or baseline. And if you click OK, the baseline is getting imported. And you can see here the Black Hat 2020 baseline was imported into event list. And you can use it now from that point on. You can also import other Microsoft security baselines. So specifying the path. And in here I have all the baselines that are available at this point. And if I click OK, all the baselines are being imported. And if there is already a baseline that already exists in event list, you get this notification that this baseline was already imported and it will not be imported again. And this takes some time. And after some time, everything is imported in event list and you can see all the new baselines in here. And this you can not only import, you can also delete a baseline. So if you select a baseline, in this case Black Hat 2020, and you click delete the selected baseline, it's getting deleted and it's not, you won't find it in there anymore. You can also delete all baselines and import them again. So here I just deleted all the baselines, and for the PowerShell demonstration I re-imported all the baselines again so that we can work with those baselines. To see all the commands that are available, you can just type in get command with the parameter module event list. And here they are. To work with baselines, you can get all the existing baselines from the database with get baseline name from DB. And you can use them to work with them. So you can either delete them with the command remove all baselines, so all the baselines are gone. You can import them with the command import baseline from folder. You need to specify a path. And now here I imported the GPO again. You can also import all the other baselines again, as I showed you. And I'm just forwarding a little bit. And you see all the baselines are imported in here again. So if you want to delete one single baseline, you can use the command remove one baseline, and you can pipe in the baseline name just to the command. You can also use remove one baseline with the parameter identity. No, not identity, but baseline name, and just delete the baseline with the command remove one baseline. And you see the baseline is gone. And now to clarify the first question, how can we generate an event list? So we need a baseline, or we need to check several MITRE attack techniques or areas. So in this case, I select a baseline and I click on generate event list. And here we have two options. We have baseline events only. So this just creates all the events that would be generated if a baseline would be applied. And you see it again here, you have the event ID, a description, an event link, the recommendation, what you should monitor, success, failure, or both. And you also have the recommendation if you should monitor it for security or not. Then we also have MITRE attack events. This option you can select if you just want to know what event IDs are covered by this technique. And here we are. You see also a link, you see an event name or a description, recommendation, and also the techniques. And there's a lot more to do in here. So if you want to contribute to event list, please contact me. I would be happy to have you on my team. And we also have the option to export it as a CSV. We can do the same thing via command line. This could be useful if you want to automate things. So again, we use get baseline name from DB to just pipe in the baseline. And I was too fast. The command here to generate the baseline event list is get baseline event list. And if you submit it, you get all those objects where you have all the information about the event, event ID, event description, also link, and you can just process it. Without grid view, you can open it again in the same view as it did in the UI. So we have the same option not only for the event list, we can also generate a MITRE event list with get MITRE event list. And you see here are also the objects, again, with all the information that is available in the database behind event list. And without grid view, I can also see it in here in this view. Of course, you can also export it as CSV with the according PowerShell command. You can use the baseline name. You don't have to pipe it. You can also use the baseline name or the GPO name and just pipe the name into it. You also don't need to pipe it. There's also a parameter that I will show you within the next command. And there's also the option to just use the MITRE ATT&CK technique IDs and pipe them into get MITRE event list. Here they are. And last but not least, this is the parameter that I meant, is identity. So you can either use get MITRE event list or the other command to create an event list with a parameter identity. And you can either pipe techniques in there or a baseline name. So, first question, which events will be generated? Covered. Next, which events should be forwarded? And for this use case, I implemented a button that is called Generate Agent Config. So first of all, you need to select several techniques or select a baseline and then click on Generate Agent Config. And yes, I had to implement an Easter egg. So yeah, there are no event IDs needed for Microsoft Defender ATP, but yes, there's an Easter egg in there. And if you, for example, select Splunk, you just get the snippet, the configuration snippet that you can just copy and paste into your configuration. And same thing with XPath based syntax. So for example, ArcSight or Windows event forwarding. There's no need to just copy and paste all the event IDs one by one and fill them out manually. And you can do the same thing here with a command line. And to see what agents are supported, you can use get help with a full parameter. And here you see Splunk, XPath, and also MDATP. To generate an agent config, just type get agent config string and then select which techniques should be used to generate this agent config. And also you could also you can also configure a baseline. Let me make it quicker. And here is the forwarder name. In this case, I specify Splunk. You can select from the forwarder names above. And here is your very own configuration snippet that you can just reuse to forward your events. Similar with XPath. And you can not only just copy and paste it with the CLI, you can also use it to automate it. And as I said, you can also pipe in a baseline. So get baseline name from DB, select one, and pipe it to the get agent config string and with the forwarder name of your choice. And here we are. So which events should be forwarded? Covered. Now last but not least, the hunting queries. To generate hunting queries, I rely on Sigma. Sigma is an amazing framework that uses a generic description, which is in the YAML format, to pipe it through the Sigma converter. And the Sigma converter just generates the SIEM query of your choice. So if you want to create a query for Microsoft Defender ATP, for example, you can just pipe it through Sigma, specify it. If you want to generate a query for Splunk, you can also just change the parameter to convert it to Splunk query language. And to do so, I have several options implemented in Event List, and I'm going to show you what is possible in this next demo. So first of all, again, you need to select a baseline and or check major attack techniques and or areas. Use the button Generate Queries to select a SIEM solution and to generate the queries, or you can also use the second option to just generate in plain YAML format. So currently, if nothing is configured, and if you select the SIEM system of your choice, then you will just get the plain commands to generate the Sigma queries on your Sigma backend server. I will show you how that looks like. This is useful in case that you have no Sigma installed on the computer on which you use Event List. And here we are. You had to specify the output folder, and now we have two files in here and a folder. We have the Event List Queries MD. This is a markdown file, so you have not only the syntax in there that you need to use to convert the YAML file to the SIEM system of your choice, but you also have the title, the author, and all the rest that belongs to the query in a markdown format. So if you want to document what you did, you can just copy and paste it into your documentation system that supports Markdown. We also have the Event List Queries TXT, and here you just have a plain queries and just without Markdown. And last but not least, we have the YAML folder, and here are the YAML files. So if you want to generate the queries on another system, you need the YAML folder and the queries. So if I open it, you see here again, here is the command that you need to convert it to the SIEM system language of your choice and all the other information in Markdown. And here are the just plain queries. And you see that you need to specify the YAML file in the query to convert them, and here they are in the YAML folder. So I said there's another option. You can just generate them in plain YAML format, specify the folder and select the option. And now if we open everything, then you just see the Markdown file and the YAML file. This is useful if you just want to use it for documentation and if you don't want to generate any queries. So this is what you need to look for if you want to detect for this certain technique. Last but not least, yes, of course, you also have the YAML folder. And last but not least, there is an option to directly generate Sigma queries on your PC. Therefore, you need to configure Event List, which you can do with a button, Configure Event List. There is the checkbox Configure Sigma path, and when you check it, then you need to select the folder where the Sigma C file is located. So if you clone the Sigma repository, this is normally in the Tools folder. I specify it, click OK, and here you can check it is configured. If this path is set, you will see it. Now, if we generate queries, you can just select the system of your choice and generate them. And this takes some time. You also need to select the folder where you want to store them. This takes some time because, well, Event List is PowerShell. Sigma is based on Python, so Event List just calls Sigma for all the queries, and therefore it takes some time. And now I will show you the folder, and then we do some fast forwarding because yeah, that takes some time. You need to be patient. When it is done, you see 3 files, 1 folder. You know the event list queries, MD, you know the queries txt, and you here a new file, sigma log txt. In the markdown file, instead of just having the command to convert those queries, you just have the direct hunting query that you can just use to hunt. Then in the txt, you also have all the hunting queries with all the additional information. And last but not least, there is a log file. And in this log file, you see which query was processed. And if there was a problem with a certain query, you can also see it here. For example, if a certain YAML file is not supported by Sigma yet, you can see it here that it's not supported. And if you need support, you can either create the code yourself or ask somebody who can help you. And again, you have all the YAML files also in this folder. You can do the same thing with PowerShell. If you want to know which theme systems are supported by Sigma, you can just type in get Sigma supported theme from DB. And now we want to specify all the technique IDs that we want to convert into queries. You can do this also with baselines. And let me quickly get us through here. You can use the command get Sigma queries. You need to specify the path where you want to store those queries, and you need to specify the theme name. And if here the queries are being generated, and you see also the markdown file and the txt file. I unconfigured event list, so I removed the Sigma configuration for this demonstration, because I also want to show you what you need to do later if you want to configure Sigma. So you can also take the baseline to generate a Sigma query, or you can also use the name. And you need to specify again the theme and the path where this output should be generated. And here we are, event list queries MD and event list queries TXT. And last but not least, you can also just take the identity parameter and either generate either specify the baseline or a technique ID or multiple technique IDs. And this works too. And here we are. Our output is we used to know it. Again, there are multiple options. Also the YAML option. The YAML only option you can specify with a YAML only parameter. And here we are. If we specified YAML only, then we only have the markdown file with YAML. And now to configure event list, so to configure the Sigma path, you can use add event list configuration and then the path. If you execute the command get Sigma path, you see that the Sigma path is configured. And if the Sigma path is configured, then event list will use this path to directly convert all the techniques into queries of your theme system. And a new folder is created. And this takes again some time. So I'm fast forwarding it here. And here they are, our files, the markdown, the txt, and the log file, as you are used to see from the UI. And last not least, if there is a Sigma path configured, you also want to have an option to remove it. And you can remove the Sigma path with remove event list configuration. And it is important that you specify the parameter Sigma path so that the Sigma path is being deleted. And if you ask or if you query if there is a Sigma path configured, you get nothing as output. So Sigma path was successfully removed. Last but not least, hunting queries, check. So I also inserted some other options into event list. So first option, we just talked about YAML files. So there is an option to import YAML configuration or to remove existing configuration. And there's also an option to generate GPOs. So you need to select again your techniques or your baseline, well, your techniques basically, and specify an output. And here it is, your very own GPO that covers those techniques. And you can also do the same thing with PowerShell. So with you remove all YAML configurations, you can just remove the YAML configurations and use import YAML configuration from folder to import your own. You need to specify a path. And again, this takes some time. So I implemented a fast forward in here, and there they are imported. So for the GPO path, you can specify the techniques. And I just fast forward a little bit by myself. And you can just use the option get group policy from my techniques. You need to specify an output path. And here they are, or here it is, your very new GPO. You can also just use the parameter identity to specify one or more techniques. Also specify the output path. And here it is, your very new GPO, the second. So those are the options that you now have with the latest version of Eventlist that I will release shortly after Black Hat Asia 2020. And if you are now interested in contributing to Eventlist, I would love to have you on my team. So if you have any ideas on how to improve it, or on new features, or if you want to support me by just also improving the data behind Eventlist, I would love to have you on my team. So let me know. If you already have worked on Eventlist, just create a pull request, make sure that all the tests are running, that the code is valid, and just create a pull request for the development branch. If you have any ideas, let me know. On Twitter, I'm Miriam Xura. That is the best way to contact me. And I'm really looking forward to your ideas. So in total, First, security auditing is amazing, and you should definitely do it more often in your environment. Event list can help you with that. Now you can also automate it with CLI. And last but not least, I'm super thrilled to hear what your use case is with event list. So if you have an amazing use case to automate something with event list, let me know, tag me on Twitter, just make sure that I see what amazing work you are doing. I'm super excited to see what you're coming up with. And so far, thank you very much for your attention. I hope that event list is very helpful for you. And I wish you a wonderful day and an amazing Black Hat 2020. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.